And we will start with, before we do anything else, we will start with our Fire Chief, Jared, introducing our new local government intern.
Yes, thank you, Worship Council. It's my pleasure to introduce Vandana Bharti.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I'm good.
You need emergency services.
I'll call 911.
Okay.
Vandana comes to us from Calgary, where she was working beforehand, and she's a local. And we had our first staff meeting this morning, and it was good. So welcome, Vandana. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for having me here. And I'm really liking this town. And yes, looking forward to working with you all.
Awesome.
So
Welcome to Creston.
Thank you.
And how long is your term?
It'll be 12 months.
Yeah.
Well,
So we've got a 12-month term for us, and we'll be focusing on some specific projects in that 12-month time. So it's really exciting to have that capacity and be able to sink our teeth into some of those projects on both the emergency management side and the climate side.
So you'll be here for all seasons, and we hope there's not too many emergencies. I guess that's couldn't happen to us.
Thank you.
Okay, you're very much welcome to our town, and we're happy to have you. Yeah. And you're not obliged to stay here unless you really want to see the whole meeting, but you're not obliged to stay here. Thank you. So I would like a motion then to adopt the regular council agenda of January 14th. Councillor Eisler, seconded by Councillor Aries. All in favor? Motion is carried. And then we'll deal with the minutes from the other meetings before we go into business. Start with the motion that council adopts the minutes of the regular council meeting held on December 17th, 2024. Councillor Holland, seconded Councillor Baldwin. All in favor? Motion is carried. And the next one is that council receives the public hearing meeting minutes of December 17th, 2024. Councillor Eisler, seconded by Councillor Aries. All in favor? Motion is carried. We go right into our verbal and written reports, and we should have a slide coming up on what we've been up to lately. Okay. So since our last council meeting, on the 9th of January, I attended the Creston Valley Services Committee meeting. Just before Christmas, I also attended the area school assembly and their whole contest. And so they always want me there as a judge, and it's always a fun event. Councillor Holland, you're next.
January 8th, I went to the Creston Blossom Festival Committee, so they're ramping up for this year's events. Sounds like there's lots going on, so it should be a good weekend for all. And then I also went to the Creston Valley Regional Airport Society as well, although I think one of those dates is on the 9th, this Airport Society. Which was also quite good, and we're waiting more on the HM Aero consultation.
Yeah. Any other reports from councillors? Hearing none, then I would request a verbal or a motion that the verbal and written reports of council be received. Councillor Aries, seconded by Councillor Eisler. All in favor? Motion is carried. And my next request is that motion that council resolves itself into a committee of the whole. So motion 2 by Councillor Baldwin, seconded by Councillor Holland. All in favor? Motion is carried. We'll start with the delegation. Staff Sergeant Brandon Buziak, you are welcome to come up and update us.
Over here.
Yeah. I don't want to crowd you, so I hope you have enough room.
Thank you, Your Worship, Council, staff. Thank you for having me again. No PowerPoint today, as we do that once every second presentation. A little bit more data than just a simple quarterly though, as this is going to encompass the calendar year end for us, which we do keep statistics, some by way of fiscal and some by way of calendar year. So I'll start with just an overall calls for service for the calendar year 2024. Very busy year for us. This detachment typically sees calls for service in the range of 3,300 to 3,700 in a busy year. Overall calls for service. This past year saw us at 4,147 calls for service, a significant increase. Those calls split between the provincial and the rural area versus the municipality were 2,288 for the municipality, 1,859 for the provincial rural area. So
can you say the municipal again?
Municipal's 2,288.
Thank you.
Rural 1,859. So a significant uptick. I attribute to a lot of proactive work to that increase in that number as well. There's a lot of extra stuff being done behind the scenes in order to get us to our strategic priorities of one of the biggest ones being our tackling the fentanyl issue. So in order to build up investigations to the point of being supported by way of judicial authorizations or search warrants to be able to tackle these issues, we need to kind of create the story leading up to it, right? Not create it, but corroborate it. And so in order to do that, there needs to be a lot of proactive work, which does create files, not necessarily always calls for service, but files. A bit of a breakdown in those statistics. So we've handed out 735 traffic enforcement coupons, tickets, whichever we want to go with on those.
Sounds like an incentive for them.
It's the new friendly wording, right? Which is in line with the strategic priorities we set. One of them being road safety at the start of the year, was to see an increase in enforcement activity, specifically in our school zones, places such as that. That number is up. That is not always a positive indicator. It does mean that the infractions are taking place. We obviously don't have a municipal traffic section, so probably just scratching the surface on that. And I foresee following further consultation with you, that road safety will continue to be a priority going into the coming fiscal. We executed 11 search warrants under the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act last year. Per capita, that's probably one of the highest numbers this side of the country, if not across it. I want to caveat that with that does not necessarily mean that we have a significant problem in our valley, right? It means that our members are doing a good job in working with the public to identify the places that these substances are coming from and that the proper steps are being taken to tackle this. We have a very, very good handle on who's doing what in this valley, and they don't get to move too freely without receiving service from our members.
You have a bit of an estimate of how much you've taken off the streets by doing that?
Total rough estimate, don't quote me on the number. I'm going to say we are somewhere in probably the 8 kilogram range of illicit toxic substance.
That's quite significant.
That is, when you think about a drug like carfentanil, for example, it takes not much more than a couple grains of salt size quantity to overdose a non-user.
Wow.
Right. So when we're talking in the kilogram range like that, that's a big number. Also with those search warrants, as I alluded to in my last presentation, which I can now speak freely about, we had a problem residence within the municipality. We tried to deal with the owner of that property as in a manner that would hopefully dissuade them from further criminal activity in the community. The owner of that property chose not to cooperate, not to listen. Continued enforcement action was taken. And in working with our partner at the Civil Forfeitures Office, we successfully seized that property in its entirety. It is now listed on MLS for sale, not by that owner. That is a message that will be going out later this week publicly as well, as a reminder, a friendly reminder to the people in the valley that if you want to be careless essentially in who you rent your property to, or with your own property, and allow the trafficking of these substances to be taking place out of it, we will keep coming and we will continue to engage with those partners, and we will be relentless with that.
Fantastic.
We did have a minor, only 7 file decrease in the mental health related occurrences last year, but a decrease. That trend in at a lot of places is still going up every year. So to see it even pause and just a slight decrease, I'm happy with that. I've found that our working relationships with the Interior Health and with the hospital here have been going well. The amount of time that members are tied up in dealing with those instances seems to be decreasing. Things seem to be a little more streamlined with the process, and so there's been some positives there through some working groups and whatnot. From a resource standpoint, we continue to be 100% resourced. Again, one of the few detachments I can say that is. We have a lineup of people wanting to come to Creston, experienced officers, which is another great thing. But we also have a lot of members that no one wants to leave now. So it was also good. I've managed to, in the last 6 months, onboard 2 new reserve constables. Reserve constables are essentially they have to be retired RCMP officers. And there's some limitations within how long they're retired, that type of thing, but we can bring them back in a reservist capacity, which is like part-time. They're still a full peace officer status. They're armed. They're not to be confused with an auxiliary constable, right? They get paid. We were able to secure the community policing and media relations officer out of Cranbrook Detachment, retired. Chose not to go back to Cranbrook Detachment, wanting to come work for Creston instead. So I've just recently onboarded her. She's going to be spearheading some media initiatives for me, getting us built up into some social media platforms and that type of stuff, things that are well above my technical abilities. So that's going to be a huge help for me and is great news for us. We've also secured another retired sergeant out of Major Crimes Unit in Kelowna, who has spent a lot of time working on a high-profile file historically in the Creston Valley over his years. He's probably one of the most advanced subject matter experts in that area that I'm not going to go into specifics on. But he has agreed to come back as a reservist, working from Kelowna primarily, remotely, but will be attending here on an as-needed basis to help our general investigation section with certain types of more advanced files. Unfortunately, those resources don't actually count on our books. They're provincially funded, which is great. Doesn't hit the municipality at all, but they don't count as a resource on our organizational chart, meaning that they're not counting towards additional positions for us to get, that type of thing. But in the meantime, it's great to have them. We did have a minor issue, well, a significant issue at the detachment this year with some equipment in our exhibit locker failing. That's something that I've been working with the CAO on and to get a program, a better system in place for monitoring. We're still doing some damage control as to what operational effects that mechanical failure is going to have. I'm hoping it's going to be manageable and not too consequential. Community engagement over the year. I'm really happy with our members with the community engagement. We established the Creston RCMP Charity Foundation. That's specific to Creston. We support causes that primarily are for children's needs, whether it be medical, meal plans, school supplies, clothing, winter clothing, that type of stuff. It's gone really well. This last year, we were just throwing it together and doing what we could. We were able to raise just over $30,000 for children's charities that go directly back to this area. Our members are in the schools now. We're getting the police interaction and presentations going in the high school again. We've got a couple of members that have transferred in that are very keen on that were known for that in their previous communities and are picking it right up here. It's going great. The relationship with the high school is very strong right now, which benefits our operations and just the presence in the community. We've got some members involved in coaching with hockey, involvement with the Thundercats organization, the parades, Blossom Fest, and also the Cram the Cruiser event has continued to go on, was another good event this year. That yielded a ton of food for the food bank, as well as a few $1,000s for our elementary school meal programs. And attention drawn to this stretch of the border that we have to deal with. There seemed to be a significant amount of I hope there will be some further conversation in the meantime as to what that might look like. But I won't know more until then.
Councilor Baldwin, you have a question?
Behind the post here, so back to the forfeiture earlier on. Have we had a forfeiture of that size before? I don't recall anything.
This is the first full residential and property seizure in the municipality here. Yeah.
Very impressive. Very good. A good warning.
It's obviously not something we want to do, but
it shows you're serious.
It's in the public's interest, and it does send a message. It sends there's in this time, without I'm not criticizing any systems, but in this time, money is probably hitting someone in the pocket is the most effective way to send a message.
Congratulations. I will allow a gallery question. I will, but then we usually do that at public time. Okay, but he won't be here at public time. So if it's something that's burning right now that is pertinent to there, okay, then we'll move on. But just further to the border issue, I've heard some of the same things you probably have. And I don't think it's the same model as the previous model with IVED, is it, that they're talking about? I think it's slightly different. Is that correct?
Yes, the conversations have been very broad in nature, and I think that there needs to be a lot more thought put into. There's a lot of discussion around aerial resources, that type of things, drones, helicopters. But in reality, it's great and all to spot that, but you have to have the resource on the ground to respond to deal with it. Right. So whether they look at, I personally think that one of the better ideas would probably be to reallocate some federal resources back to this area where they once were. To be able to have that quicker response time and more proactive work on the line itself. But I hope I'll get some say in those suggestions, but I've not been approached by chain of command for that.
Yeah, and I think my experience in the border when I worked, and then your experience now, is that likely if they dedicate resources to here, they will see some results because there is activity going on.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I wish I could clone officers right now.
Yeah,
The results would be cloned as well.
yeah, it would be. Our border is quite porous. Lots of backcountry here, so yeah.
Yes.
Space missions. Okay, well, thank you very much for your update. Really appreciate it.
Thanks,
It was excellent.
Thank you very much for having me.
We're glad to hear you're at full complement, and looks like it stayed that way for a while.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just.
Thank you very much. Okay, Creston, this would be a recommendation, not a motion, right? Yeah, so we just recommend that the committee of the whole receives the delegation from Staff Sergeant Brandon Boziak, our CNP, regarding the quarterly report for the period of October 31st to present. Are you good with that? Yeah. Okay. We have that recommendation done. So now, next is a council direction request from the manager of building and bylaw regarding consideration of free licenses for adopted cats and dogs. Who's covering that one?
Will be me, your worship.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, the manager of building and bylaw is away on personal leave at the moment. So I'm not, I don't know if there'll be any questions to this. I hope it was pretty straightforward, but what the concept of this is that when animals, pets, and dogs and cats are being adopted out of paws, is that through the adoption process is that they would be given one free license. What happens is that when currently is when they adopt, they're given a piece of paper to go to the town and get your pet license, and is not a large level of compliance with that. And so when we eventually do get the name of the owners of the animals that are adopted, and in many cases, these animals have been animals that have been seized by our bylaw services in some cases. And so sometimes they're problem animals to begin with. So then we're doing follow-up work to gain that enforcement. So the concept of talking to volunteers from PAWS and staff was to come up with a program where we provide that first initial license for free. We get them filled in the application at PAWS. We'll mail them the license, but then they're in our system immediately, which allows quicker follow-up, and renewal would be sent out the following year. So it's just a way to sort of educate and gain compliance with less effort on our staff's part. Yeah, it's a good idea.
Yep.
So my only question in reading the report and our recommendation coming up is their policy is that these animals have to be neutered. Is that correct? Before they're released to a new home?
Yeah.
Yeah, you would know.
Yes, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, because that was my one concern is if we're licensing these animals and they're not neutered, of course, that's a higher license fee. And so it's a good incentive for them. But our desire is to have neutered animals in our community.
They very rarely do they have any pets that are up for adoption that are not spayed or neutered. Their whole point is that they want to put them out, and with vaccinations as well, most of the times, unless there's a health issue.
Yeah, so that all makes sense. And that makes the entire thing make sense to me. So, yes, our recommendation then is that the report titled Consideration of Free Licenses for Adopted Cats and Dogs dated January 14th, 2025 from the manager building bylaw be received, and further that council direct staff to draft an amendment to the fees and charges bylaw to provide a 1-year pet license for a dog or cat when adopted from the Pet Adoption and Welfare Society. So we're good with that? Sure. I think it's a great idea. So we've done all our committee of the whole stuff already, isn't that something? Could I have a motion that we rise from committee of the whole? Councillor Arias, seconded. Councillor Baldwin, all in favor? Motion is carried. And we will go on with our council meeting then, and we'll start with the division reports, starting with our council action list, effective January 10th, as of January 10th, 2025. Is there any questions on the action list? I know it's on our agenda and we've all seen it. And hearing none, is there any? Okay, go ahead.
Just going to comment on the installation of the bulletin board, the community forest one. It's still up in the air, but it does not look as going to be through in the walkthrough. It will be, right now it's sitting over at Kootenai Park or Kootenai, but we're still discussing perhaps a better location for it. So that could be a while longer. Give them a bunch of recommendations. But.
Okay, because I did have a question on that, and which you partially answered, because that's one of the oldest items on our action list now, and it's a great idea, and I'm hoping we can see that one come to some conclusion soon.
Yeah,
yeah, the other ones are a little newer.
But we just said Creston really does not have a really comprehensive trails sign anywhere.
Yeah.
And on any website anywhere. And so if we're going to do it, we want to do it right, put it in the right spot that's useful to everyone and not diminish a Kootenai Park or a Kootenai itself.
That's great. Any comments from staff on anything? Councillor Houghton, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm at our last Trails for Creston Valley Society. We talked about some wayfinding through town, and they suggested that we might want to look at, there is a bulletin board or a kiosk that's near College of the Rockies. And they weren't sure who the owner of that kiosk was, but it's essentially empty. And maybe that's something to consider too, Keith, where that's at. If you're out biking, maybe go find that kiosk and see if it is actually empty.
Yeah. First step still has to be content, because nobody can kind of agree who should package the maps together and kind of who the audience would be and all that. It's all good.
Yeah.
So it'll happen soon, but I just wanted to make sure it was clear that we weren't holding on that walkthrough location at this point. So,
maybe we should work with the wayfinding.
yeah, Joel will be involved in this.
Mike, is there any of those items that staff wanted to give us any updates or elaborate on?
That is updated as current,
Okay.
so staff keep that updated. So.
Okay, yeah, no, it was good, and I think that we see progress on everything, so we appreciate that. Okay, and I would request a motion that council receives the council action list dated January 10th, 2025. Motion to by Councillor Iser, seconded Councillor. Yeah, you can second it. You're way over there. But you can, all in favor? Motion is carried. Next, then we have a request for decision from the corporate officer regarding the lease agreement for Kootenai Community Center Society.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, as you're aware, the town of Creston owns Creston Education Center, and Kootenai Community Center Society operates Grizzly Bear Daycare out of Classroom H. They've entered into a 1-year agreement with us last year, which has an option to renew for 1 year, and they've communicated their desire to continue on with that. So the first part of this request is considering their lease agreement for a 1-year extension for that area. And the second part of that is closing up the loop on the grant request that they brought forward in late 2024. So the way that we have applied that in the past is through a funding agreement that gets applied directly to their rent. So it's $600 for the specified time, which would date back to September 2024 and continue to June 2025. And then 600 is applied to their rent, so their net rent is $400. So at this time, we're just looking for council's approval for the lease agreement and at their discretion, the funding agreement for that $6,000 grant request.
Any questions? That's good. No questions, and I would, I'll read out the motion then. That the report titled Lease Agreement for Kootenai Community Center Society dated January 14, 2025 from the corporate officer be received for information. That council authorizes the corporate officer and the mayor to execute the lease agreement between the town of Creston and Kootenai Community Center Society for a term expiring December 31st, 2025, subject to the completion of the notice of disposition in accordance with section 26 of the community charter, and further that council authorizes the corporate officer and the mayor to execute the funding agreement between Kootenai Community Center Society to be applied directly to rent for the period of September 2024 to June 2025, subject to the completion of the notice of intention to provide assistance in accordance with section 24 of the community charter. So having said all that, motion 2 by Councillor Baldwin, seconded by Councillor Holland. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. So our next order of business then is a request for decision from the Director of Finance and Corporate Services regarding 2025 participation in the Welcome Neighbor Program.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the town has participated in this program, which is relatively new, but what it does is it provides new residents with packages that contain a letter of welcome from the mayor, instructions regarding how to get added to the wait list for doctors, a number of motions from local businesses, documents regarding donations from organizations participating in the program, et cetera. And so entering 2025, we're asking council's authorization to continue with the program. But at the same time, the way it was done was that we were being billed for all new residents in the valley. And so council staff is suggesting that we have a more customized package that we could provide more information regarding the town to new residents. So we'd like to have separate packages only for Creston residents, with garbage schedules and more information about the town and all those things. And that we would suggest that if, for residents outside, that's something that the local area directors may consider maybe through a different funding source. So the town's not funding the whole valley. And so I'd like to get direction if that sounds good with council, to do it that way, or to proceed as we have been, which is providing the packages for all new residents in the valley.
Okay. I will read the motion, and that council authorizes continued participation in the Creston Neighborhood Welcome Program for new residents within the town of Creston boundaries to be allocated from the councilor's advertising budget with an annual review in January 2026. And further, that council directs staff to recommend that the Creston Neighborhood Welcome Program connect with the Regional District of Central Kootenai Area Directors to support the program in the RDCK electrical areas A, B, and C. Motion 2 by Councillor Eisner, seconded Councillor Aries. Discussion? Councillor Baldwin.
I was thinking about it, and I do understand there's some things that are unique to the town, but there's also an opportunity, no matter what, to spread out a wide message, because most of the beneficiaries and businesses and things like that will be in the town. And it was only $900 last year. I really didn't see that the cost of it should be a factor, but the opportunity to, perhaps enhance it for residents where things like garbage pickup and things like that are relevant, and still manage expectations for new visitors. But I saw it as being a package that, with a broad net, it increases its value intrinsically. If you can tell people that are going into it, you're going to get people that are in West Creston, and they don't know the difference between West Creston and the western part of the town. I just thought for the amount of money involved, if it was material, I would have thought, sure, absolutely, we're just being responsible, but of that $900 is $600 already going to town residents, so I didn't really get a chance to ask them, bring it up. So from my perspective, then I would go for the second option, but we're voting on the first option at this point.
Yeah, well, we have those two as a combined motion. And if we pass this motion, then I would request that the further part go to the area directors through the Creston Valley Services agenda.
No,
and so we would be then moving that as an agenda request to the Creston Valley Services. Yeah.
One option is that we could ask the economic development function pay for all of it. Because it's
really, yeah.
You know, it's for the whole valley. And so that's something that potentially we could ask Creston AB
In the process, yeah.
I think we'd have to still approach the Creston Valley Services with that request, and then if they agree to it, then we could probably come back here with then council approving it with their agreement on their part of it.
It will accomplish the same thing.
Yeah.
Rather than making a deal about it in the motion, then.
Okay, all right. So I'll call the question then. All in favor of the motion, the two motions there that are together? Okay. Motion is carried. And again, Creston, if you could maybe send that as an agenda item. They're starting to look for the agenda items for the next Valley Services meeting. So, yeah, thank you. On to infrastructure. Request for decision from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding hazard remediation of the former fire hall building located at 140 10th Avenue North.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I did attach the report there, and it is pretty unwieldy to go through, so I'll try to keep it at a really simple level. So really everything you need to know about that assessment report is really in that executive summary, starting page 3 or 4 for a couple of pages. And when they do testing in a building, there's some actual testing they do, and then they do some presumptive work. In other words, if they take a test from a piece of drywall in this room here, at this corner here, they'll assume that this side also has the same result, right? So when you read it, it's, you know, we tested, we know, and then we presume. And so, you know, they make some assumptions throughout that. Probably the most important thing is that there's a couple things. There's thresholds for certain products. For example, you know, the percentage of asbestos that's allowed. It's not that there's no asbestos allowed. Some products still have some trace amounts of asbestos in it, but it's as soon as it hits a certain particulate level, especially when it's in a dust exposure, that they become problematic. So when they do that is they rate when they're testing a building or looking at a building, they rate it basically on a scale of 1 to 7. 1 is you must do something immediately, restrict access until it's remediated, and 7 is that, well, you know, there may be a hazardous substance in that building material. If you're not disrupting it, you don't need to do, as long as it remains in good condition, you don't need to do anything. So because we were required or needed to, prior to entering into a legal lease agreement or consider a legal lease agreement, we actually needed to understand our hazard assessments to the building from a legal context. And because you can't ask somebody to take a building as is when you don't know what as is really is. So we did that, and lo and behold, we've had a level 1 cleanup that we have to do with the ceiling tile in the training room. There was some broken ceiling tiles in the back. The threshold for that material far exceeds the minimum requirements. I think it's 0.5%. And so that's a level 1 cleanup. And our staff right now can't even enter the building. So that makes it really impossible to ask somebody to then lease the building. All the other items, when you go through that list, when you read level 1, I think the rest are, so the ceiling tiles is a level 1 and level 5. So the level 1 is to clean up the broken debris tiles, and the level 5 is, because of the age of the tiles, is to proactively replace the rest of them. So the level 5 is. The remaining report of all the things that says it found are all level 7, which means they're in good condition. And unless you're planning on disrupting them, they're fine. And only upon disruption would you do that. That becomes part of the lease agreement. So leaseholder improvement. So if there's a decision that they want to move a wall, well, then it's up to them to move the wall, and whatever hazard mitigation is required for that specific renovation would be the responsibility of the leaseholder at that time. So we did acquire three different quotes, or three different quotes. At the end of the day, it's looking to be in the range of about $25,000 to remediate. And that's to remediate and basically clean the entire back training room where the asbestos was at, as well as replace the ceiling tiles for the potential incoming, or prepare the building for a future commercial lease opportunity. I guess that would be, if there's any questions to that, I would.
Councilor Baldwin?
Timing, could be many months, is it really?
I think that they could start relatively shortly. So the answer is they can start relatively shortly. So not a significant delay, it's just an expensive,
Okay, hearing no further questions, and I'll read the recommended motion that the report titled Hazardous Remediation of Former Fire Hall Building dated January 14, 2025 from the Chief Administrative Officer is received for information, that the report titled Pre-Renovation Hazardous Materials Report Select Areas Public Building dated January 6, 2025 by Anglo is received for information, that council authorizes the expenditure of $25,000 to remediate the identified ceiling tiles within the former fire hall building to allow staff to re-enter the building and additionally be able to secure a commercial lease for the space. And further, that council directs staff to engage a qualified contractor for the hazardous abatement recommended from the report, specifically the removal of ceiling tiles in the former fire hall training room that contain asbestos. That's the motion in its entirety. Moved by Councilor Baldwin, seconded by Councilor Holland. A discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. We move now to the request for decision from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding wastewater treatment plant operation and maintenance plan.
Thank you, Your Worship. And again, this is another one because I'll take some responsibility for this not being in the budget process earlier. So I took this from the Director of Infrastructure Services. As you're aware, we had an organizational assessment that had a number of recommendations. One of the key things, which actually even triggered the organizational assessment, was around our wastewater treatment plant and the concerns of such. During the budget process and getting ready for the budget process, and the timing for when the organizational assessment was completed November 19th to our budget starting November 26th, I made the assumption that we actually had some operational funds that we could just direct towards this project. My bad, we didn't have the funds to be able to direct to that. So what this would be is approving an operational budget, one-time project budget. The sheet is attached. Of $40,000, which would be from the sewer. Remember, this is a utility, so this would come from sewer utility reserves or surplus to be able to fund this, and then also to remind council that all your operational funding for the wastewater treatment plant is cost shared with through your cost agreement with the brewery. So your actual bottom line, it's a $40,000 operational approval. With a impact to surplus of 20. So anyhow, so this does meet one of the recommendations, and it was one of the things that we really need to work upon prior to any for succession planning for the retirement of our Director of Infrastructure Services coming up. We need to sort of get this moving forward so that we can better understand and reduce the risks related to that. Sure.
Any questions? No? Has to be done.
Mm.
Okay, I'll read the motion then, that the report titled Wastewater Treatment Plant Operation and Maintenance Plan dated January 14, 2025 from the Chief Administrative Officer be received for information, and that council approves the operational budget request of $40,000 to be included in the 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan to engage a qualified consultant to undertake an independent audit of the wastewater treatment plant and its operations to fully understand the performance deficiencies and risks that will result in an improved operational and maintenance plan. And further, that council authorizes staff to engage the consultant prior to the approval of the 2025 to 2029 5-year financial plan in March 2025 to allow adequate time for the current Director of Infrastructure Services to participate in the process prior to his retirement. Motion 2, Councilor Aries, seconded by Councilor Houghton. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? That motion is carried. Moving on to the request for decision from the Director of Infrastructure Services regarding 2025 capital budget approval.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's some items here I brought forward, some requests for early approval just due to my retirement. I'd like to assist my department out by trying to accomplish most of this before I leave. There's a burden put on the new employees that are brought in. And the backlog, possibly this not happening, some of this work, just with timelines of purchasing product. I set most of these sheets up. I know all the contacts, the contractors, and yes, that's about it. It's your guys' call. You'd like to see.
Okay, well, if we slow this down, will you slow down your retirement? Probably not.
Sorry.
No. I will read the motion then that the report titled 2025 Capital Budget Early Approval dated January 14th, 2025 from the Director of Infrastructure Services be received, and that council provides early budget approval for starting the defined capital projects outlined in this report for annual sidewalk replacement, RCMP building and property upgrades, storm sewer upgrades in Hawkview, replacement of the Millennium Park fountain, installation of park security cameras, and defined projects within the water and sewer utilities. And further, that council provides early budget approval for starting the defined operational budget projects for water and sewer utilities outlined within this report for developing a water operations and maintenance plan and managing sewer statutory right-of-ways. Motion 2, Councilor Holland, seconded by Councilor Baldwin. Discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. So I guess we won't be interfering with your retirement afterwards. After all.
Sorry, if I may, I should mention with the Millennium Park fountain.
Yep.
I have spoke with both Rotary clubs. I think they're in the process of joining.
Yes.
So I've been asked to hold off until they join, and then we can possibly present them and request more funds to assist with that.
I believe they are joining.
I think.
They were involved in the initial project, were they not?
The one club was, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
And now we go to community services, request for decision from the manager of building and bylaw services regarding agreement with the Creston Pet Adoption Welfare Society. So you're probably doing that one, Mike?
I will, Your Worship. So attached is the agreement that outlines the terms and conditions of PAWS to operate the animal shelter on behalf of the town, or to provide animal shelter services, I guess, better way to put it. We've attached an agreement that this one would be from January 1st, 2025 to December 31st, 2027. More or less, this agreement's been in place. We've been renewing it on an annual basis for a number of years now. And so the only real significant change to this is moving forward with a longer term agreement, which just allows the society to do a little bit better long-term planning and don't have to worry about, if we're changing anything. Conversely, it also provides cost certainty on our part is that, then we know from a year-to-year basis that nobody's about to come ask for a significant increase. So it kind of that's a two-way street. There is also options during the agreement if we need to address or renegotiate anything. Of course, those provisions are within the agreement as well. So.
Any questions? No, this one's fairly straightforward as well. So the recommended motion is that the report titled Agreement with Creston Pet Adoption and Welfare Society dated January 14, 2025 from the manager of building and bylaw services be received, and further that council authorizes the mayor and corporate officer to execute the agreement between the town of Creston and Creston Pet Adoption and Welfare Society for a term ending on December 31st, 2027. Councilor Aries, seconded by Councilor Holland. Yeah, you're involved in this stuff anyway.
Mm.
Right, yeah. Okay, any, discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. And then we go on to request for decision from the manager of community planning and development regarding RDCK wood smoke reduction program.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a very quick request from the RDCK. The council provide a resolution to support our ongoing participation in the wood smoke reduction program. Essentially, we are one of 3 contributors to giving rebates for replacing your old wood burning stoves with things that are more efficient. Council in the budget was presented with $1,000 for the program, which would cover 10 rebates. Last year we got 1.
Yeah.
So if council likes to proceed, then this is the time.
Big hurt.
So is one sort of below average, like we have an average over the last few years?
Yeah, so we've had I think the most I've seen in the last like 5 years was 3 in 1 year. We had a year with none, so that's kind of the range. Yeah.
Yep. So we're not replacing them quickly, but we're giving them these incentive to replace them. I'll just read the recommended motion then, that the report titled Regional District of Central Kootenai Community Wood Smoke Reduction Program dated January 14, 2025 from the manager of community planning and development be received, and that council approves town of Creston's participation in the Regional District of Central Kootenai Community Wood Smoke Reduction Program for the 2025 calendar year. And further, that council directs staff to provide a $100 rebate on a first come, first served basis for each eligible stove exchanged by town of Creston residents or property owners in 2025, up to a maximum contribution of 10 total rebates. The motion 2, Councillor Baldwin, seconded by Councillor Houghton. Discussion? All in favor? Motion is carried. We move on then to recommendations from the committee of the whole. And the first motion is that the recommendation number 3 from the regular committee of the whole meeting of December 17, 2024 be adopted as follows. That council receives the December 17, 2024 council direction request titled Childcare as a Primary Use in All Zones. And further, that council directs staff to prepare a zoning amendment bylaw to allow for childcare in all zones as a primary use, without limitation on the number of children permitted, subject to the Community Care and Assisted Living Act. So motion 2, Councillor Eisler, seconded Councillor Aries. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. We'll run through some bylaws now. First is that official community plan amendment bylaw number 2010-2024 be read a third time by title. Motion 2 by Councillor Baldwin, seconded Councillor Holland. All in favor? Motion carried. Next motion that official community plan bylaw number 2010-2024 be adopted. Motion 2, Councillor Aries, seconded Councillor Houghton. All in favor? Motion is carried. Next motion that zoning amendment bylaw number 2011-2024 be read a third time by title. Motion 2, Councillor Aries, seconded Councillor Houghton. All in favor? Motion carried. Next motion that zoning amendment bylaw number 2011 be adopted. Okay. Motion by Councillor Holland, seconded by Councillor Aries. All in favor? Motion carried. And last is the motion is that fees and charges amendment bylaw number 2012-2024 be adopted. Motion made by Councillor Eisler, seconded by Councillor Aries. All in favor? Motion is carried. We have some correspondence, and the first motion is regarding the Creston Valley Blossom Festival request for license of occupation to use north and south parking lot of Millennium Park for the Midway. Any information needed on this, or we can just make a motion on it?
Question?
Quick question. The Sandy Dam, what other options are there for people coming? It's going to be a very busy time of year, and it worked last year.
Yeah, so last year what we did is we talked, I believe, to the Ramada, and they offered that service while that portion of the parking lot was blocked off. And then we did some public communication about that. So we put on our website and our Facebook that that portion would be closed and that there is alternative options.
So people aren't just driving around the block trying to figure out what to do.
Okay. The motion then is that council authorizes a license of occupation to the Blossom Festival Association for the use of the north and south parking lot adjacent to Millennium Park, legally described as Lot A, District Lot 891, Kootenai District Plan NEP 00665, except Step Plan NEP 070196 from May 12th to 19th, 2025. That'll be the Blossom Festival dates. So motion made by Councillor Houghton, seconded by Councillor Baldwin. All in favor? Motion is carried. And next is the AKLB first call, AKBLG first call for resolutions. Any additional information needed before I read the motion?
I don't have any other additional information. If there are resolutions that would like to be submitted, they are due by February 28th, 2025. So we do have some time to think about if council has anything they would like to raise.
Yeah, I'm also in discussion with the regional directors about this. And so if there's something that comes out of that, I'll probably take that back to the council table, at least for information and nothing else. So it'll be worked on in two different ways. The motion then is that council receives the correspondence from the Association of Kootenai and Boundary Local Governments respecting the first call for resolutions. So motion made by Councillor Aries, seconded by Councillor Houghton. Discussion? Okay, Councillor Houghton, go ahead.
Do we ever have, do the councillors ever get together in a bit of a workshop to talk about potential motions that we'd like to bring forward to the AKLGB? I think I said those wrong. The group.
I don't think we've done it that way because we haven't had a lot of motions originate from council. But if councillors have a motion in mind, I think we would send that to you first, I think, Creston, for dissemination among council. And then we would probably arrange for a time to discuss it and elaborate on it. So I believe that's how we can make that work. So I certainly welcome ideas, and if we can do that, that'd be great.
Okay.
And in my experience in the past, I've done a couple of drafts, and they don't, so not getting too far into it, too many assumptions. There's a critical look at them from the town administration, and they go, here's why you should or shouldn't, or how you might tweak it before you bring it to the, you could spend a lot of wheels spinning otherwise if you get it into the system.
I think just from a staff perspective, who's going to support any resolution by doing a bunch of legwork and resource work for you that's already busy, is I would not suggest that you're looking for resolution because you just think that's a good idea. I think that resolutions, generally the best ones that hit the floor at UBCM, are ones that communities are facing the challenge, and this is a barrier to them right front and center. Not just going, well, it's time for resolutions. Let's bring something up that's not really yours or passionate or is a barrier to you. Then certainly when staff have to work on it, they've already well swept up in the topic, the conversation, because we're working in it. There's probably some reason we need as an organization to make a recommendation for change. So that's my suggestion is that if it's not an issue we're dealing with right now, then that doesn't eliminate that there is some resolutions at a much higher governance level that doesn't require staff report or staff support necessarily, that you couldn't bring forth. That there's something near and dear to you. That's certainly not what I'm suggesting. But if it's it's one thing. If we're not really working on it, it's probably not an issue for us as an organization.
I've also found that the resolutions that are usually brought up at UBCM or think by other communities are ones that are impacting our community as well. So it's just good to support.
They do get debated at the AKBLG conventions, which is very useful to have in there and either turned down, amended, or adopted. Anyway, all in favor of the motion that's on the floor. Motion is carried. We just have some correspondence received for information. First is Patricia Martin regarding the establishment of situation tables in the Creston community. That's the only one we have, so the motion is that that correspondence be received for information. Councilor Eisler, okay, go ahead, Mike.
Your worship, before you make the motion, and I know you just received it for information, I just wanted to clarify that, this is the writer's perspective of a situation table. I want to be clear. The province actually outlined what a situation table is and who's on it, and it's not. So the issue she's bringing forth is not a concern of council, because that won't be your makeup of a situation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We will just
I
receive it.
was just gonna say that.
Okay, thank you. So motion 2 made by Councilor Baldwin, seconded by Councilor Eisler. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Motion is carried. And so that almost brings us to a close of this meeting. Actually, there's one more here, the resolution from closed meeting, sorry. So the recommended motion is from closed resolution 104-23 that council authorizes staff to proceed with the funding and purchase agreement for the acquisition of the property located at 820th North, legally described as Lot B, District Lot 891, Kootenai District Plan 1091, except part included in Plan NEP 23119. So motion 2 made by Councilor Holland, seconded by Councilor Aries. Discussion. All in favor? Motion carried. And then lastly, the motion from the previous closed meeting, the council awards Town of Creston leadership to Cyrus Donaghy and Mariah Collins. And of course, that was for earlier this year. We had done this in closed, but we hadn't really revealed who the winners of the bursary was for last year's graduation. And so we're just bringing that into open for public information. So motion by Councilor Eisler, seconded by Councilor Holland. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carried. In this spring, we will be reviewing the request for this year's bursary, and again, we do that in closed until we're finished, and then we release it to the public. So we didn't do that as quickly as we could have, but there it is. So you see before you the acting mayor schedule for the next while. Next month, Councilor Aries, then Councilor Baldwin, and Councilor Dumas, and down the line, everybody gets their turn. So we just open it up for public questions before we recess and move into closed meeting. Any questions from the gallery? Hearing none, we are going to we're going to have a recess, 5-minute recess, and then motion is that the regular council meeting be recessed at 5:03. By the authority of the community charter, council moved to a closed council meeting, with this meeting being closed from the public and or news media pursuant to 91 sub C, labor relations or other community relations, and 91E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements, if council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality. So motion 2, Councilor Holland, second about Councilor Baldwin. All in favor? Motion carried. So we will have a 5-minute recess. Thank you for attending, and then we'll proceed to our close.
Gotcha.
Nobody raised their hand for question, David? No? Not today.
Night, everybody.
Thanks for
Right.
That's not, I just want to.